I'd like to jump ahead quick to the concept of weaponized ambiguity, because a lot of critiques of the Second Vatican Council is like, oh, it was deliberately ambiguous in its teaching or lack thereof, because they would slide something like that into, and therefore, like they made it possible for people to skew the wording later on to their own devious intentions. Okay, so I'd like to talk about that. I don't think it was deliberately ambiguous. I think I'm trying to propose something else in season 3, which is that they proposed characteristics on various teachings for various, whatever topic, characteristics, so that they wouldn't exclude anything unnecessarily. And that this is like in engineering, so I'm trained as an engineer. In engineering, we would call this like a solution agnostic proposal. So if you say like, hey, I want my kids to like swing on the tree outside. Okay, well, a swing, that's, a plastic seat with 2 ropes, right? What color do you want the ropes? What color do you want the seat? Well, what about a tire swing, and the tire swing, like, well, is the tire hanging vertically or is the tire hanging sideways? Like there are a bunch of different ways that you can swing. You can have a rope swing, these are solution agnostic. You have to phrase the proposed solution in a solution agnostic manner so as to not rule out other potential options. Mm-hmm. So my proposal for the Second Vatican Council was that it was not ambiguous. It was solution agnostic in its characteristics.
Yeah. I would agree. The language of weaponized ambiguity, of course, comes from a claim that Shillebeeckx was making. And in fact, he was saying that he was in fact quoting somebody else who he said, this other person was telling me that this is what he wants at the council. And it was an individual who had absolutely no authority to really stir things up and phrase things in the council documents in an ambiguous way. And it wasn't something that was happening all over the place. He's just referencing one guy who said this, who didn't really have any voting power or influence. And he in fact disagreed with it. Shillebeeckx didn't even agree with him on the matter. So I think that what's happened is they've latched on to that and turned it into something it's not, as if that there's all these ticking time bombs in Vatican II all over the place, and there's all these pariti that just are deliberately making things ambiguous, and they intend to all just use it later on as if there's this big plot of conspiracy. That's just not happening. Now, if we speak about, the term, I think the term you used was solution agnostic.
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. But even if somebody wants to say, well, some of the things that it chose, some of the language that it chose to use was somewhat ambiguous. Okay, but not any more so than other councils. That's the thing. We can speak of other councils using ambiguity, or whatever term you want to use. We can speak of the church choosing not to give an answer on certain issues and deliberately wording things in a way that leaves them open. Mm-hmm. We can talk about that with pretty much every council historically. So Vatican II is really no different there. And if we're going to knock Vatican II for that, we have to do that with Nicaea I. We have to do that with Chalcedon. We have to do that with Trent and a whole bunch of other councils.